Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today is product backlog, how to create it, how to organize it, and how to maintain it as well. Now, this is not one of those things you just read about in an agile book and somehow ignore them in real life. This is the actual day-to-day tool you literally live inside of as a product manager. Now, if you're working with a team or if you're building anything, it could be an app, a website. By app, I mean a mobile app because we also have web apps. Now, it could be a mobile application, a website, or a new feature inside an existing product. Now, this is where it all starts. The backlog is your single source of truth, right? It holds the work, it holds your scope, and it even holds your thinking and your ability to manage. This backlog separates you from someone who's just busy, right, to someone who's actually building with, purpose and a clear direction in mind. Now, having a backlog doesn't mean dumping everything into a list and somehow calling it a day, right? It's not a graveyard, right? Anybody can write stories, anybody can fill a form, with tickets. But what makes your backlog powerful is how it is created, right? How it is structured and how you prioritize and how you keep it clean. Because here is what tends to happen. People start out very well. They write a few user stories and they write a few user stories, drop them in and call it a backlog. Then weeks go by and suddenly it's just a bunch of confusion everywhere because you have unsorted, unorganized, and unclear stuff flying around, right? And your team starts, skipping things. Your user stories don't get properly groomed. Your priorities, they kind of get buried. And before you know it, people are no longer building from what they are supposed to build from. They're not building from memory or messages dropped on either Slack, Discord, or any communication tool you guys are using. Instead of building from the product's backlog, that's when your product is officially a mess. So our job today is to make sure you never let that happen, right? I'm going to walk you through how to build a backlog from scratch, even if you're starting with nothing but just an idea, right? I'll show you how to organize it so it reflects the user journey, not just some random tasks, right? And I'll show you what it takes to maintain it, right? To keep it healthy, relevant, and usable for your team. Also, by the end of this session, you should be able to open your backlog and actually see a clear story. You should be able to tell what's coming next, what's most important, and what's not ready yet. You should be able to say things like, these are the next things we're delivering, and everyone on your team should, be able to picture what you are picturing, right? So this session is going to be somewhat practical. I'll share real examples, right? We'll go back to our money transfer example, then since that's the one we've been working with, and we'll actually create a backlog from that, right? I want you to, see it come together step by step, right? I want you to see how to slice your stories, how to prioritize them, and how to avoid kind of making a mess. So yeah. Okay, so today what we are going to learn, because I don't want to give you some vague ideas, that's not the goal here. My job is to make sure that by the end of this session you understand the product backlog so well you can build it from scratch, maintain it with confidence, right? So let me walk you through what we are going to be looking at today. First, we are going to talk about what a product backlog actually is. What does it represent? What does it hold? Right? Why does every product team need one? And why do most teams somehow mess it up, right? Then we'll talk about what exactly is in a product backlog, the kind of items that belongs, and so on. After that, we'll look at the different types of backlogs, because you might be thinking, isn't a backlog just a backlog? Well, not really. There's the main backlog, yes, but there are also other types of backlogs, right? So I'll show you how they work, right? When you use each one and how to avoid duplication or conflict between them. Now, once we've got that covered, that foundation covered, I'm going to walk you through how to actually create and develop a product backlog. We'll still use our money transfer app again, because that's the flow we've been working with, and because you kind of already understand it based on the user stories that we created last week. So by the end of that session, right, not only will you be able to structure a backlog, but you will also know how to start one, even if your product is, still just an idea in someone's head, right? And, a lot of other things we are going to be talking about today. And finally, yes, we'll talk about the meetings product managers need to participate in, right, when managing a backlog or any product, right? Because this is not a solo work. If you're building a product with a team, there are specific kind of ceremonies, permit me to call it that, ceremonies, plannings, grooming, refinement, reviews, right, that you have to lead or be involved in somehow. In some meetings, sometimes as a product manager, you might not even get to say a word. Other people might be doing the talking, but you just have to be a part of it to pick some things, right? Now, I'll break each one of them down, right? So let's just get right into it without any further ado. Please give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me clearly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, but we talked about breaking those big ideas called epics, and we broke them down into understandable user stories. We used a real life example, which was the money transfer app, and I gave a task that some of you did beautifully well. But now the question is, what do you do with those user stories that you broke down, those user stories you now have? What do you do with them? Because stories don't live in isolation. You don't just write them and then leave them there. And this is where your product backlog comes in. So what is the product backlog? Let me put it in the simplest words, right? The product backlog is the place where all your products work lives, right? It's a list, but not just any kind of list. It's a living, breathing direction of your products broken into pieces, right? Not only does it hold your current work, it also holds your future plans, your ideas, your rough notes, your must-haves, and your not yet sures, right? I hope you get the point. But it's like the brain of your product. And if you don't maintain it, your team will slowly stop trusting it, and once that happens, everybody starts building from memory. from assumption, right? They start building as the spirit leads, and that's where and how confusion kicks in and starts. Right now, here is what I don't want you to think. I don't want you to think the backlog is something you need a special tool to understand. Now, I'm not talking about Jira, ClickUp, or Trello right now. I'm not talking about tools right now. Those are just places where the backlog lives. But if you don't understand what the backlog is, the tool is not going to be any helpful to you or useful, right? Right now, I want you to focus on the why behind the backlog. Why do we need it? Because, like I said, after you've broken down your epics, right, you need a place to keep those stories. Now, not just to keep them, right, safe, but to organize them, to kind of prioritize them, right, to say, well, here is what matters the most right now, and this is not urgent just yet, but let's just have it here. So that is where your backlog comes in. So let's go back to our money transfer app. Right, let's say you've broken down the epic, right, into 10 different user stories, from creating an account to verifying phone number to adding a recipient, selecting a payment method, right, and reviewing the transfers and so on, like we talked about, right? You now need to take all of those stories and ask some critical questions, right? You need to ask, what's the most critical for the working MVP, right? What's required to get the user from start to finish? What must be built first? And what can wait until the next phase, right? What's still unclear and needs some more research or interviews, right? Now, that decision making, right? That's what the backlog helps you do, right? The backlog is not where stories go to sit and gather some dust. No, it's where they go to be refined. It's where they go to be reviewed and eventually moved into development. It's your backlog, it's your job rather as a product manager to keep the backlog clean, to keep it clear, and to also keep it current. Some common mistakes I've seen in too many teams, right, that are wrong are let's say someone creates the backlog in 1 week. At the time, it's clean, it's neat, it's very well color coded. It makes sense. But the next 6 weeks, right, nobody touches it. It becomes stale. Old stories are still at the top. You still have some old user stories at the top. New ideas are just scattered around in other places like WhatsApp groups or communication channels and not on the backlog, right? Your engineers are just asking, what should I build next? Maybe they come to work in the morning and they're like, what should I build next? And you give them what to build. You guys are not following the backlog, and you as a PM, you're replying from your memory muscle. You do not have anything to go back to. You do not have anything like a foundation to guide you, right? This approach is how products kind of drift apart and fall apart if you do not recoil yourself back. Now, your backlog should be your anchor, right? It doesn't just help you plan, right? It helps you remember why you made those choices that you made. When you look at the board, right, it tells, the story of your product from concept to wherever it is that you want the product to get to. Now, let me say this clearly, right? A backlog doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, a good backlog always have rough pieces. It has stories that aren't ready yet. Please note that when I say stories, I'm talking about user stories, okay? It has stories that aren't ready yet. It has ideas that, still need some refinement. And that's normal. That's very healthy for your backlog. But what matters is um the top of your backlog should always be clean. That's the part your team is pulling from. That's the part closest to becoming reality. So keep that section sharp, keep it well written, detailed, and prioritized. You often hear that a good backlog is groomed. Now, what does that mean? It means a good backlog is reviewed regularly. You sit with your team, you read through it together, you remove duplicates, you clarify stories, you try to adjust your priorities, you make sure the top items are ready for development, RFD, right? I'll teach you how to do that part soon, but for now, I want you to think of the backlog like a garden, right? When you plant, you don't just plant seeds and walk away. You water them, and over time, you prune them, you pull weeds as well. Now, that's likened to how you build your backlog. You make sure the product grows in the right direction with the help of your backlog, right? Now, let's move on. So now that we understand that the backlog is not just a long list of tasks, but the living, breathing direction of the product, we are going to open it up and see what's actually inside of it. Now, imagine someone asking you, if I opened your product backlog right now, what would I see? Would I just see features, or would I see the full picture? Now, in order to answer that, we are going to walk through all the different types of items that should live inside a well-managed product backlog. I want to show you how these things come up in real life and how they show up in your daily work, your daily product work, right? Don't I won't be giving you the textbook terms, right, for you just to memorize. I'm going to explain each one so clearly that you're well grounded, right? So that by the time we start doing the practical part of it along the line, right, you already have these foundations to keep you grounded. When you encounter something, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about this in class. So now going back again to our money transfer example, you've got your flow, right? A user can create an account, add a recipient, choose, please, I hope we are together and you have your writing materials, right? A user can create an account, add a recipient, or choose a payment method, transfer funds, and also receive a receipt. Now, let's say your team is building this out, these features I have mentioned, right? This flow. And you decided you're going to be doing it in sprints. So every few weeks, you're trying to ship a piece. Along the way, things come up, you learn things, you find problems, you get feedbacks, right? You get new ideas, or you also find bugs, unexpected behavior, and you find things like tech debts and missing design pieces. Now, all of these are things that end up in the backlog, or if they do not, they should end up in the backlog. Okay, let's talk about the most obvious one first, which is the features, right? Also called user stories, right? This is what most people expect to see in a backlog. Features, new functionality, something the user can do. Now, these are your user stories, and I want to believe everyone on this call already knows how to write them because, well, we practiced that during our last class. So, for example, If we are still using the money transfer app, well, let's use that. You might have a story like, as a user, I want to save my recipient's account details so I don't have to enter them every time I transfer money or every time I want to transfer money, right? That's simple, that's clear, and that's very direct. But for features, right? Listen, features are more than some cool ideas that you have going on in your head. Your features are responses, right, to the user needs. Your job is to make sure that the backlog doesn't get filled up with some vanity random features or some nice to haves, right, that don't solve real problems or user problems. And not every feature is the same size. Some will be large, and those are your epics, while some will be small, fast, implementable, user stories, right? Those are your user stories broken down, your epics broken down. That's why one of the unique thing about a backlog is that the backlog doesn't just hold features. It holds them in different sizes, different levels of readiness, and a big story might live in the bottom of the backlog, right? While it's still very rough. It's not yet broken out. Then once you break it down and refine it, it moves up the backlog's radar, right? Now, this movement of up and down is constant because you're always grooming, you're always refining, and you're always thinking, right? So as you're always thinking, things are always changing. Now, here's something people sometimes miss. Not all features are built right away. Some epics and stories sit in the backlog for weeks or months even, and that's fine. Not everything is urgent, but everything in the backlog should have a reason for being there, right? Now, the features is the first, right, type of backlog item. Now, let's talk about the second backlog item, which is bug fixes. And this one is straightforward, but also very, very dangerous if ignored. Bugs are when things go wrong in your product. Maybe transfer fails or the app crashes when you tap a certain button or try to engage, a certain feature, or the fee calculation is wrong. Please take note, my examples are still being tied to the money transfer, right? Now, bugs don't wait for you. Bugs make your users angry. They reduce trust in your product, so you can't treat them like normal feature requests, right? What I usually tell people is this: if a bug affects a user's ability to complete a task, it goes right to the top of the backlog. You don't have to think twice, you don't have to delay it. Don't plan for the next quarter with a bug. Fix it as soon as possible. You know what? Scratch that. Fix it as soon as you see it, right? Because it is a bug. It is something that is bugging your user. And if it bugs your user, you're sending them right to your competitors because they will look for other options that do not have those bugs. Now, not all bugs are equal. Some are edge cases, right? Some are low impact. Those can wait, right? You can, triage them. But the key thing is they must be in the backlog and tagged clearly. You need to tag them clearly. Is this a feature? Is this a bug? Is this an enhancement? Don't worry, when we get practical and start looking at tools, you understand all of this better. So you need to tag every item in your backlog clearly. Don't leave bugs in someone's notebook, right? Don't get a bug a bug, you find a bug in your product, and then you try to write it down on a notepad or something. Don't do that. Don't leave them buried in emails either. Maybe you sent an email to the developer concerning the bug that is supposed to be fixed, and then you forget it right there. No, do not do that. Track them, label them, prioritize them, because once they're in the backlog, your team can see them, right? You can estimate them and deal with them properly. But if you have them in somebody's email or in a notebook that you can easily forget, that's not helpful, right? I know that sometimes your sprint gets full, and a critical bug comes in and makes you pause, what's going on, right? That's your job as a product manager. You need to look at the current work and make a call, right? Make a call to decide if your team needs to stop something and fix the bug, or if they should, wait it out, right? These are, product decisions, and the backlog helps you manage those, trade-offs transparently. Now, next up is one that's not always very visible, but very much real: technical debt. There's something we call technical debt. Now, this one tells you that what you postponed always comes back bigger, or what you're postponing has a tendency of coming back bigger. Now, let me explain it in plain language, right? When a developer takes shortcut in his or her code because they're trying to meet up with a deadline, they maybe had code something instead of building it the right way, and they ignore a cleaner architecture to kind of push out a quick release. Now, some debt is fine. I mean, it's part of building fast. But like financial debt, if you ignore it for too long, it accumulates and it gets harder to fix. So as a PM, here's what you do. When your dev guys, your developers, right, they tell you, oh, we'll fix this later, your response should not be okay or take their word for it. No, your response should be great, right? Let's create a story and put it in the backlog for when you're ready to pick that up. Now, you're not doing this to punish them, right? But to make sure you are able to track these issues later. Because if it stays in someone's head, it gets forgotten. If it's in the backlog, you can schedule time to address it. Even if it skips your mind for a bit, every time when you go back to your backlog, it is very visible. You are going to see it and you are going to attend to it, right? Maybe during sprints, right, you can tackle one dead item. That is if it's on your backlog, right? Or you run something called a tech cleanup sprint, right, to tackle things like that. Whatever works. The point is, don't hide it. Track it. That is what you should do. You should track it and not hide it, right? Some examples of tech debt in our money transfer app might be, let's say, refactor currency conversion, right? Seeing that it's a money transfer application, or it can be separate business logic from controller layer for better scalability. That's for those who understand what I'm saying. Now, it could either be improved performance of transaction history query, right? Write all of these things down, right? Don't have it in your head. Write them down. Now, I understand that this is already sounding strange because these aren't features, right? The technical debt is not like features, user stories that you understand clearly. But the product, right, will suffer if you ignore this aspect of the backlog. That's why they belong to the backlog as well, right? They are not to be ignored. Now let's move to the next one, which is one of my favorites because sometimes it often gets overlooked, right? That is knowledge acquisition, research, spikes, and learning task. Sometimes you're not sure what to build just yet. Maybe you've been asked to add facial recognition to the money transfer application, but you don't know if it's possible. You don't know what the regulations are. You're not even sure if your users want, this facial recognition thing on the application. That's when you add knowledge acquisition tasks to the backlog. Now, these are your research stories, your spikes. You learn before you build stories. It is called learn before you build stories, right? For example, research API provider for facial recognition authentication, right? You have to do that research. And you also have to prototype, flow for biometrics login. And you also have to conduct user interview to test, the acceptance criteria of, facial login from the users. Now, at this point, you're not yet delivering any feature, right? You're still gathering data, but it's still your work. It's still a job you're doing. You're still working. It still needs time allocated to it, right? It needs resources. So it should be visible. That is why it is added to the backlog, right? These stories are gold because they prevent, wasted effort. Instead of building the wrong thing, you get to slow down, you get to learn, and then finally have the zeal to build with confidence, right? Now, never let research live outside the backlog, right? It's part of the product evolution. Never let it live outside of the backlog, right? Include it in the backlog. All right, we've covered features, bugs, tech debts, and knowledge acquisition, but there's still more, right? There's still more. Let's talk about support tickets. Right. Please give me a thumbs up. Let me know we are still together. And you can hear me clearly. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you guys. So support ticket. This one is simple, right? Sometimes users complain. Sometimes they get stuck and frustrated with your product. Don't be surprised, right? When these comes in through customer support or email or even your social media or whatever channel you use for feedback, what do? You don't just resolve it and move on. You log it, right? You log it into your backlog. Now, support tickets are user feedback in its very raw form, and many times they reveal things that some of your analytics cannot reveal to you, right? So when your support team says, we've got like 10 complaints about transfers failing at night, you take that pattern and create a backlog item, right? And investigate transfer failures reported between, let's say, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And then you improve error messaging when bank network is down, right? So these are things that logging it in your backlog can help you achieve. Now you track it because support is the closest voice of the user, right? Your support system is the closest person or the closest ears you have to the voice of the user, right? And the last one for now, one of the most important is improvement areas. This is you polishing what already exists, right? sometimes the product works, but not well enough, right? It's functional, but it's not delightful. The flow is there, but it's somehow clunky. That's where improvement stories comes in. You've shipped your, let's say you've shipped your transfer flow, it's working, but users are complaining that they don't know when the money has been received, right? The money they've sent, they don't know when it has been received. Now, that's an improvement story, right? Add delivery status to receipt. That would be the story. Now, show estimated arrival time on transfer confirmation screen. Please note, right? These ones are not bugs. They are not new features either, right? But they enhance the user's experience, and that really matters. Improvement stories show that your team cares about quality, not just functionality. And when you kind of prioritize these kinds of stories, your product gets better, not just bigger. Now, right? It gets better. So we've covered a lot. So when someone asks you what goes into a product backlog, I need you to be able to confidently say that you have features and user stories, you have bug reports, you have technical debt items, knowledge acquisition task, support-driven issues, improvement, opportunities will grow and change as your product grows and changes too. But your job is to keep it simple. Every item should have a reason. Every item should lead somewhere. And your team should be able to understand, all of this clearly. And that is your job as a product manager. Now that you know what's inside the backlog, we are going to talk about the different types of backlogs you might encounter because, well, like I mentioned earlier, there's more than just one. So out here in the real world, product teams, especially those using Agile or Scrum, we don't just work with one long backlog. We break it down into different levels. Sorry, this is looking strange. What is looking strange, Chukwemeka? Please drop it in more clear chat. Thank you. So out here in the real world, product teams, right, using Agile or Scrum, we don't work with one right? We try to break it down into different levels, different types based on focus. So we are going to talk about different types of backlogs. And I don't So yeah, we're talking about different types of backlogs, right? You must know. Now, depending on what part of the product journey you're working on, there are three major types of backlogs you're going to encounter. Each one has its own job. Each one helps you manage the product better. And we have the product backlog, whose job is to hold everything you want to do, right? Then we have the release backlog, which holds everything you want to deliver for a specific version or phase. And then the sprint backlog, which holds everything your team is currently working on, right? Let's take these one by one, right? The product backlog. The product backlog is where everything kind of starts, right? It's the home of your product ideas. If you imagine your product like a big warehouse, then let's say if your product is the big warehouse, then this is the storage room, right? Where all the shelves are lined, with future possibilities. In our money transfer app, it's login, enable QR code-based transfers, and then the box might sound something like box, right? And then your improvements can be something like your improvement stories, right? Can sound something like redesign the confirmation screen to reduce bounce, right? And then if you want to do a research, your research can go this way. It could say explore integration options with GTB Bank API or any other bank API. Now, see this particular backlog as you can see it as your master inventory list, right? It houses everything. Now, this is not what the team is working on a day-to-day basis. This is what you could work on eventually, right? You can think of this as the product's wish list, right? Your product's wish list, except that this one is more organized and somewhat, prioritized constantly. Now, the product backlog is managed by the product manager, but the whole team also contributes, right, to it, because you're always adding to it. You're always removing outdated stuff, always moving things up or down, depending on, the business's needs and customers' feedback. If something is in the product backlog, that means we've got through about it, right? We've got to think about it. We might do it, but not right now, right? But that's why it's in the backlog, and that's why the backlog helps you hold your long-term version without overwhelming your team, right? When somebody gets to say that, oh, in the next 6 months, we are going to do this, but then they are not overwhelmed because it is not something that is put in there to kind of overwhelm them. It's just something to put in there to give them an expectation, a 6 months or 3 months expectation, right? Now, from this master list that you have, when it's time to deliver a version of your product, maybe let's say version 1.0 or 2.0, that's where the release backlog comes in. Now, the release backlog is the second one, right? The goal for this version is a temporary subset of the product backlog. So let's say your company says, we want to release version 2.0 of the app by the end of this quarter. That version should support card payment, improve user onboarding, and fix, that annoying login bug that already exists. Now, what you do at this point is you go to the product backlog and select the items needed to achieve that goal. Now, you're not trying to rewrite everything afresh anymore because you already have it on your backlog. So what you're doing is just selecting the things that your company mentioned, which is this version should be able to support card payment. It should be able to have an improvement. Now you already have these things on your backlog. What you do is just go there and select them, right? You create a release backlog. Now you select these items from your product backlog, which is like the general place, and then you now create a release backlog. Now that backlog might look something like, add card payment option, send money, fixed, persistent, things I've mentioned. These 3 stories here I've mentioned covers, what your company said they needed the app to be able to do in the 2.0 release, right? And maybe you could add a welcome email with FAQs after people have signed up. Now, this becomes your focus for the next few sprints. Every time you plan a sprint, you pull from the release backlog. So, right, what's the benefit of having this? The benefit is that it gives you clarity, it gives you, prioritization, and it also gives you focus. Now, instead of just randomly pulling from the product backlog, right, your team now knows, oh, we are working on what's needed for the next release, right, on what's needed for the next phase. The release backlog becomes your, your North Star for the short term, right? Now, let's go even somewhat narrower, right? Because you're not going to work on the whole release at once. You deliver it over time, sprint after another sprint. And that's where the sprint backlog comes in, right? The third one is the sprint backlog. What we are doing right now, now we are now in the day-to-day level, no longer in the months and weeks level. We are now in the day-to-day level. The sprint backlog is what your team is actually working on, right? Let's say this week's sprint is your current execution list, your to-do list, your deliverables. Now, it's pulled directly from the release backlog or from the product backlog if you're not doing release-based planning, right? If you're not doing any release-based planning, you can also pull from your product backlog. Let's say you're in sprint 12 and you've got a 2 weeks window. You hold a sprint planning, you look at what you have that is ready, you review your team's capacity, and you select 6 to 8 stories that can fit into the sprint. Now that becomes the sprint backlog. For example, implement card payment UI, connect card payment API, that's 2. Write test cases for failed card transaction, that is 3. Update help article with card payment FAQs, 4. Now, everyone knows what they are going to be working on, right? The team's attention is now laser focused on just these user stories that I just mentioned, not the entire release, right? Not the whole product backlog, but just focused on this sprint. Now, just these few items, this level of focus is what makes Agile powerful. You can ship fast, you can test fast, you can respond to change quickly because you're not trying to do everything all at once, right? And when the sprint ends, you review what was done, you measure what was learned, and then you repeat the cycle with a new sprint backlog because you have completed the other sprint backlog, right? So how do they all work together, right? You start with a product backlog that has everything from ideas to bugs to future plans. Then you define a goal for the next version. Maybe you want to improve onboarding, you select the relevant stories and create a release backlog. I hope we are connecting this. Then you begin sprint 1, for that release, and you pick, let's say 5 to 6 ready items, that becomes your sprint backlog. Your team focuses on the sprint backlog, and at the end of the sprint, you review, you learn, and pick the next set of items and keep working towards the release goal. Now, the product backlog is for vision, right? Please let's take note of this. The product backlog is for vision. The release backlog is for delivery of goals, right? And the sprint backlog is for execution. Please let's take note of these things. Now, why does this matter? Because if you don't work this way, if you try to run your team with just one giant backlog, people would definitely lose direction. Somebody's hand is raised. Kindly use the chat session, whoever is raising. Faith, use the chat session. Drop a chat for me. Thank you. So yeah, if you try to run your team with a giant backlog, people will lose direction. They will be confused. They will start building things that don't align with your current priorities. And you'll keep chasing people and asking a lot of questions. Are we done with this feature? I thought we fixed this already. Where is that tax from last week? How many other not so pleasing questions? And you're not going to like it. But with this layered backlog, with this system, everyone gets to stay in sync and aligned. Now, the product manager knows what is coming, right? The designer knows what is needed. The developers at this point, they know what to build. And for the testers, that's the Q&A, they know what to test. So there's no frequent surprising mysteries here, right? And nobody is working with guessworks, right? Just, everybody has a clear step-by-step product delivery plan in mind. And as a product manager, your job is to keep this in sync, right? To make sure that your team is doing today's, whatever your team is doing rather today ties back to what your business is trying to achieve tomorrow. I hope that makes sense to us. Okay, how to create and develop a product backlog, a step-by-step guide. So you've understood what a product backlog is. You've seen what goes into it. You know that not all backlogs are the same. And then you've got the product backlog for the long-term vision, the release backlog for what is coming up next, and the sprint backlog for what your team is actively working on right now. So I'm going to show you how to actually create one from scratch, or tell you rather how to actually create one from scratch, because it's one thing to say, yeah, the backlog should be filled with user stories, bugs, research, tech debt, and so on. And it's another thing entirely to build from scratch. Right, let's say your company has just asked you to build a money transfer app for the African market, right? For the African market. And that's all they've told you. They just walk up to you and say, oh, we need a money transfer application for the African market. We want you, we want to help people send money safely and quickly across borders in Africa. Now that's your vision, that's your product. They have given it to you. Now, you're sitting in front of a whiteboard that is empty. There's no backlog yet, right? So if you want to begin to add things on this white board that you're sitting in front of, what do you do first? What is the first step that you take? Now, step one, create your product roadmap. We have talked about product roadmap. right? I'm not going to go back in details, right? Before you do anything else, before you write a user story, before you talk to developers, you need a roadmap. You need to answer the simple question of where is this product going, right? What is the big picture of this product? What is the direction? What are the phases of growth related to this product? Because without this clarity, your backlog will just become a list of disconnected tasks, right? That's not useful to you or the users or anyone. So you need to take a moment to map out the product journey. Now, for a money transfer app, maybe your roadmap sounds something like, let's say in phase 1, users can send money locally, right? That is within the country. Now, in phase 2, users can send money across borders in West Africa. Then in phase 3, you introduce new payment methods like cards, mobile money, bank accounts, and so on. And then you have phase 4, where you can add user wallets, savings, and spending analytics, right? After you've gotten that, you move into phase 5, which is open API for businesses and agents, right? Now, this doesn't have to be a perfect document. Like I said, it can change. We are agile, right? It's not, it will change, right? But even if it change, it already gives your team a direction, right? It says things like we're building in phases. We are not trying to build everything all at once. And here is where we are headed. Everybody gets to know that, okay, we are headed this direction. Everybody's going south and nobody is going north, right? So when someone says we should let users create invoices, you go back to your roadmap and you ask yourself, does that fit into this phase? Maybe you're in phase 1 or phase 4, or maybe that's just a phase 5 thing. And you get to tell that person, no, we are not there yet. And you plan accordingly. You plan according to the phases that you have in the stages that you have on your backlog, right? Now, this roadmap becomes your anchor. It connects your backlog to something strategic. And most importantly, it helps your team know why they are building what they are building. Because if you do not know the why, right, well, it's very hard to move along. They are practically, you're doing something. If you do not understand where that thing you're doing is headed, you're going to be spoon-fed. Either you're a product manager or a designer or a developer. If you do not understand the purpose of why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, people will always have to hold your hands and tell you what to do. Now, step 2, list all the action items. Once your roadmap is in place, the next thing to do is list out the tasks that will help you achieve those roadmap phases. Now think of it this way. Your roadmap shows the mountains you want to climb, right? Now you need to map out the steps it takes to get to the top while climbing that mountain, right? You and your dev team, along with design, marketing, operations, if necessary, should start putting together all the actions that will get you from nothing to a product. Now, this could be anything from design login screen, enable Naira to Naira transfer flow or dollar to dollar transfer flow, as the case may be. Now, integrate Flutterwave or Paystack API, build recipient management system. Now create onboarding experience for first-time users, right? The point of this exercise, right, is not for you to buy towards perfection. You're not trying to get the structure right just yet or immediately. You're just getting everything out, every task, every thought, and every tiny thing that might be a part of the product, right? You're just trying to get those things out. Now, you're also writing down your unknowns. Maybe you don't know what regulatory issues will look like. Fine, write that down too. Maybe you're not sure how long um, it takes to identify, verification. Well, put it down as well. And one more thing, try to get estimates. Each action item should have a rough sense of time or effort attached to it, because you're not just trying to calculate hours, right? You just want to know, is this a small, a medium, or a big piece of work, so you know where and how to place it. Because as the backlog grows, these estimates helps you prioritize. It also helps you plan your sprint, and it helps the way you communicate with your team. Now, once that is done, bring your developers, your designers, your QA, whoever is going to help build this, and show them the list, right? Explain the roadmap. Walk them through your thinking, your thought process, right? Let them ask questions. Let them tell you what they think is missing, right? What they feel is missing, right? You want everyone to feel like, they've contributed to this backlog, because when people contribute, it helps them take ownership. And when they take ownership, it helps them build, better. It helps them work better. Right. So step 3, prioritize the tasks from a value perspective, right? You prioritize your tasks. Now you've got your roadmap, you've listed your task, you've started putting some good shape to your backlog, right? But you still cannot build everything at once. That's the truth. So now it's time to prioritize. And let me tell you, this is where many new product managers make mistakes, because they prioritize based on noise. Whoever shouts the loudest gets the tax belt first, or they prioritize based on randomness. Oh, this seems easy, let's build that. No, right? No, that is not the right approach. You should prioritize based on value, prioritize based on which of the tasks delivers the most value to the user or the business at that point in time. Now let's go back to going back to our money transfer app. If the user can't sign up, log in, or add a recipient, right, the app is useless. So those features go straight to the top. The sign up, the login, the adding of recipient, those are the features you push to the top. But something like add transfer animation or multi-language support, that is great. Those are very great features, but it can wait, right? You won't lose users over that one today, but you will lose users over any user that cannot successfully log in or successfully sign up. If the user gets to try once or try twice, the person will give up and look for another product that answers them fast enough. So how do you prioritize? You've got a few options, right? You can talk to users. You can do a quick survey, ask them what's most important to them. You can go back to the business's vision, ask what success would look like. Would success be getting 10,000 users in South Africa or Nigeria? Then you focus on the flow. When you get that information, you focus on the flow that helps Nigerians, or the flow that helps South Africans, right? And you can use prioritization frameworks like Moscow, a simple but powerful tool. right? As you can see on your screen. You categorize tasks as must have, right? This means without this, the product can function, right? Those are the must have, the M. And then should have. Now, this means very important, but not urgent. Then you have the could have. This means this is nice to have, but we can live without it for now, or the product rather can live without it for now. And then you have won't have for now in brackets, right? This means not doing this anytime soon, right? We're not doing, if at all we are doing it, it's going to be later. We're not doing it anytime soon. My screen still shows what? My screen still shows different types of backlog. I think it's your network because what I am sharing right now is that what's happening for everybody? Same here. Okay. So what I am sharing is how to create and develop a product backlog. Is that what you're seeing? Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare. Tell me what you're seeing now. What are you seeing right now? Okay. All right. I think that was network issues. Apologies. So, but you got my explanation, right? Okay, everybody's on the same page now. That's good. So let me go over the Moscow prioritization again, right? So the categories are must have. This means without this, the product cannot function. And then you have the should have, which means that this is important, but it's not urgent, right? And then you have the could have, which means this is nice to have, but we can, we can do without it. The product can live without it. And then you have the won't have, and then in brackets for now. This means that not doing this anytime soon. We're not doing this for this product anytime soon, right? The product can survive without it. So if you're using this prioritization technique, this helps you set a clear goal and clears up confusion for you and your team. You now have a product backlog that is structured and intentional, not just a list of tasks, but you have sets of priorities, right? And step 4 is structure the deliverables in a story format. Now we can come to the core of backlog development, which is user stories. Right? You've listed the task, you've prioritized them, but to make this backlog useful to developers, to designers, testers, and every other member of the team, you all need to speak the same language, and that language is the user story format, right? You already know it. You know the user story format as a user. I want to, do this again, right? You might write as a user, I want to add a recipient so that I can send them money easily, right? As a user, I want to receive confirmation message and the person I wanted to send it to. build a button that helps the user feel in control of their finances, or build something that helps them feel in control of their finances. I suppose you can hear me now. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. All right, now if a task isn't user facing, like the back end logic or performance optimization, right? Those ones, they do not need to face the user. You can still write it in a way that clarifies the purpose for them as well. For example, as a developer, I want to refactor the currency conversion model so that it can support more currencies in future phases, right? You're still clarifying the why for them so that they have it at the back of their mind. And that's why it matters, because you're turning a list of raw tasks into a backlog full of stories with meanings for your team. And then you have communicate the backlog, right? Communicate the backlog. That's step 5. You've built your backlog, you've structured it, you've prioritized it. Now it's time to make it, live. So a backlog is useless if it stays hidden in your laptop, right? So your job now is to communicate it. You bring your team into the process that you have created. That's where the backlog refinement session comes in. Some people call it grooming session, right? There are meetings where you, as a product manager or product owner, walk your team through what's in the backlog. You explain what's coming up next. You answer questions and reprioritize together. Let's say you're planning sprint 1, you might gather your team and say, here are the top 10 stories in the backlog. Here's why they are important. Let's go through them together and, estimate effort. And during this meeting, you get to listen, right, to them. You get to clarify their doubts. You let them push back, right? It's not what you say is rock solid. No, right? You let them get to have a pushback. That is fine, right? It's called collaboration. That's how collaboration is birthed. And remember, your backlog is not static. So even when people have pushback, it helps your backlog to evolve, right? As new stories comes in, as priorities changes, as the design changes, you go back into your backlog and you update it. Now the backlog is a living tool, like I always say, not a document you write once and forget about. So you get to share it, you get to talk about it, you get to refine it often, right? That's how you build not just a backlog, but a product team that is aligned, empowered, and moving in the same direction, right? So let me just do a bit of recap since we had a lot of interference, right? I'll just do a bit of recap. So let's look through it one more time. To build a product backlog from scratch, right? You start with the product roadmap, right? You map out your long-term direction, and then you list all action items, think through everything your product needs. And then you prioritize tasks based on user and business value, and structure them as user stories, speak in the language of the users and outcomes of the users. Right now, communicate with your team through grooming sessions and ongoing feedback. Now if you follow these steps, you will move from vague ideas to real building or buildable plans, right? And let me tell you this, right? This is one of the most ignored one of the most ignored critical practices in backlog management. If you build your backlog once and just leave it untouched, right? What you've got is not a backlog, it's a graveyard, like I said, right? It's where good ideas will go stale and probably even die. So you need to refine, you need to groom, you need to revisit your backlog regularly. Now, let me paint the picture for you. Let's say your team is building a hiring app, maybe to help recruiters screen candidates. And during your research, you discover that users want a background verification feature. Cool, right? You write it into the backlog. As a recruiter, I want to verify applicants so that I can reduce fraud, right? So that I can reduce fraud. Now, good story, this makes sense, but when weeks go by, you get busy, the team never has time to talk about it, what that verification actually means, what's the flow that leads to the verification, what tools are we integrating it with, or who is responsible for approvals, what are the legal concerns, and every other questions that needs to be answered. Now imagine your developer picks up that story and start building, right? They have no context. They now backlog refinement is not something that is very important and very integral to keep your team aligned together. I always recommend holding regular refinement sessions weekly or bi-weekly, whatever suits the rhythm of your team. But you just have to hold it, right? Now, during these sessions, you walk through the upcoming stories, you explain the why, answer the questions, the split the big items into smaller chunks, remove outdated ideas, and update any missing context. Now, this is not just about PMs. This is about your whole product team, right? Coming together, your devs, your designers, your testers, maybe even someone from support or business or even an executive, right? To make sure that what's in the backlog is still relevant, is still clear, is still ready, right? It also helps your team feel heard. Developers don't want to be handed, tickets that don't make sense. Designers don't want to be surprised by last minute iterations. Everyone wants clarity. Everyone wants purpose, right? And backlog refinement gives you that. Now, finally, the fourth best practice, which is sprint planning. Now, look, we've talked about sprint works, right? 2 week cycles, clear deliverables, focus on, done. How do you decide what goes into each sprint? That's where your backlog becomes your best friend. If it is being managed well, of course. As you can see the image on the screen, when your backlog is prioritized and refined, sprint planning becomes very much easy. You have your to-dos, you have your in progress, you have your testing, and you have your done state, right? You open your backlog, you look at the highest priority, ready to build stories and pull them into your sprint board. You put them into your to-do. I always recommend moving items to the sprint board visibly, whether you're using Trello or you're using Jira or oh boy, network. My screen is frozen. This is interesting. Okay, I have gone to how many screens now? Let me stop sharing. Interesting. So confirm you can see my screen and let me know what you're seeing. What are you now seeing? Best practices. All right, so that's where we are, best practices. But like I said, I always recommend moving items to the sprint board visibly, whether you're using sticky notes, whiteboards, Trello, Jira, it doesn't matter. The key is, to be transparent enough, right? As you can see on the image on the screen, the items should be shown very well, and then your team should be able to see what is coming up, what the business expects, what the devs are ready for, what dependencies exist, right? This visibility avoids surprises. It also helps you manage your scope, right? It also helps you manage your scope. It gives your team confidence and it helps the sprints go smoother because everyone is on the same page from day one. But here's the trick, right? Don't just move tasks blindly. Sprint planning is not a checklist, right? It's a conversation. Ask questions, right? Ask, do we have the capacity for this? Is this ticket too vague? Should we break this into two stories? Can we test this properly within this particular sprint? Right? If your backlog is clear and your refinement session have, been productive, sprint planning becomes a formality, right? It becomes very easy because you're just pulling from a healthy list of, prioritized, well-written, and well-understood story. And that is the goal. So I have switched my screen. Please let me know you can see it. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the next screen. Wow, this is interesting. No. Okay. So we're about rounding up. The talk is actually very crappy today. I apologize. So let me just round up. Please confirm the screen you're seeing right now. Methods. No, I'm not sure. Method. You should be seeing meetings product managers should participate in. Is that what you're saying? Good. Thank you. Meetings. So this is our last slide. So okay. Before we round up, I just want to introduce this. I want to introduce something we'll be looking into fully in the next class, and that is the key meetings a product manager must participate in. Now, I know when most people in the tech circle, they hear the word meeting, their first reaction is to roll their eyes. And yeah, I get it. I get that a lot. A meeting in the real world will feel somewhat unnecessary. But the truth is, you've got to understand this early, that as a product manager, meetings are not any distraction for you. They are your job. As a product manager, your job is meetings, right? So you're not here to write the code. You're not here to do the designing of the screen. Your job is to drive the team towards clarity, towards alignment, and do that with some momentum across different teams. And the number one place where that happens is in meetings. So let me just say this clearly. If you're not showing up for the right meetings, you're not doing product management, because product work is cross-functional by nature, right? You're not building in isolation. It's not the kind of work where you say, oh, I just go to my office, sit down and mind my business. No, in product management, there's no minding of business for you as far as you're a product manager. You get into other people's businesses, right? You're a pain in a lot of people's neck, right? You're working with developers, you're working with designers, and every other member of the team all at once. And the only way to make sure everyone is not pulling in different direction is by being present, showing up in the right conversation, and using those meetings to help you lead better. So I want you to start thinking now, not just about features and user stories, but about the rhythm of your week as a PM, because part of your job is building that rhythm. There are meetings where planning happens, where priorities are clarified, where some bugs are flagged by the developers, where feedbacks are given, also where updates are, demoed and so on. And you, the product manager, are supposed to show up in all of that, right? You're supposed to show up with all of those meetings with the context of, leadership. So today I'm just going to be introducing it. I'm not breaking it down just yet. That's for our next session. We'll go into each, and every one of them. Now, the meeting is what your role in it is, right? Can you guys still hear me? I'm getting a lot of network distractions. Can you guys
Yes,
still hear me?
please.
Please give me a thumbs
Yes.
up. Thank you. All right, so yeah, we'll go into each one, what the meeting is, what your role in it is, what you are expected to contribute, and how to manage your time around them, because trust me, your calendar will get full really, really quick as a product manager. All right, so when we meet next, we are going to go into the core meetings you'll be expected to lead or attend, and we'll look at exactly how to show up in them as you should as a product manager. So let's stop here for today. Apologies for all the interruptions, right? It's time for questions. Let's take questions now. Do we have any question? Somebody's hand is raised. Who is that? Chukwemeka Mata. Who is that? Chukwemeka, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I saw the slide on best practices, and I just saw 3 and 4. I didn't see the 1 and 2, so I wanted to be clear on that.
You
Thank you.
saw the slide on best practices.
Yes.
Okay. Here it is. One is stay aligned with product goals, focus on product prioritization, arrange product refinement session. Even if you didn't see the slide, I'm pretty sure you heard my explanation. All right, Martha, go ahead.
Okay, good day. Mine is not actually on today's topic. I want to say that.
Hold on. Let's focus with those onto this topic first. Then we'll get back to you. Each of my your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So, when talking about products, we know we have to consider users' needs, but also we have to consider the stakeholders' needs. Now, as a PM, how do we manage a stakeholder whose needs are always changing, and the person insists that the features he wants implemented are important for his product? How do we manage such person? let's say, for example, the person wants a language feature where he could have up to like 5 languages and the rest, and he wants everything, like he or she is constantly coming in with new ideas they want implemented in the application. How do we deal with such people?
Oh, okay. I can relate, but first of all, I need you to understand that as a product manager, your number one job role, or the number one skill you should have is clear communication, right? First, it's important to understand the stakeholders' root cause, right? Whether their priorities are shifting due to maybe internal business pressure, or maybe you haven't set a clear goal for the project. You haven't helped him or her set a clear goal for the project, or maybe just lack of alignment, right? So you need to be able to communicate better, clear communication, right? And then regular check-ins. Now, this is Agile is good, because with Agile, you can finish the authentication and then show it to the stakeholder, present it, do a demo to the stakeholder, right? And they can see at that point, maybe, okay, let's put it this way. Maybe you do not have to, the development team do not have to start building just yet, but the design team can finish the authentication. Please get my point. The first phase, which is the authentication, and then they do a demo. Maybe they do what's it called, a prototype, right? And then they do a demo. The client can now look at it, and then you do not have too many changes if he or she is going to change something, right? You do not have too many changes. You just have to, people varies, right? You just have to know how to manage the person you're working with or the person you're working for, because in the end, in as much as we as product manager, we are user centric, right? In the end, if you're working for somebody, you also have to try to make sure you're carrying your stakeholder along. You have to satisfy him or her, and it is your job as a product manager to be able to tell this person that if we are doing this, this is the downside for the users. If we are doing this, this is the upside. And sometimes in that case, you need to be able to also point out the profits in it, because if a stakeholder is always changing things, that means the person is either business centric, or he has other stakeholders that he is they could probably be sponsors, or and they are most interested in the business aspect. So you need to be in sync, right, with them to also do your business research, and also be able to convince them that, okay, this is the good side of the product. If we do it this way, it's going to affect this. If we do it this way, it's going to affect that. So basically, the summary is just communication, clear communication. I don't know if that answers you.
Yeah, that works. But I was going to add that sometimes when you show a stakeholder a design, that's when they know they have many other great features they would like to add to the app. So
Yeah, I
just like,
understand. If you're a designer, right, it is your job to be able to explain to them. Everything lies in communication, right? Show them what you can do now is give them 2 options. Show them, add everything they're asking you to add in one screen, and then design the accurate thing in the other screen and let them compare. You get, let them look at the accurate thing, see the wrong thing, or what we think is the wrong thing, because it might not be the wrong thing in their mind, right? Let them just see the difference. I don't know if that helps you.
yes, it does. Thank you so much.
All right. Martha, you can go ahead now.
Okay. I would like to start by saying that I'm one of those that my my assignment is overdue, and it's because I've been trying to wrap my head up around writing an epic story. So like I want to, although I've watched the YouTube videos, but I still want to get a deeper understanding of what metrics I can use to, measure the success of an epic.
To measure the success of an epic.
Yes, like what makes an epic story stand out?
What makes an epic story stand out is your product idea. The product idea that you have is what will help you generate an epic. And if your epic does not stand out, it means your product idea does not stand out.
Okay.
Okay. You don't sound convinced. You have another question?
It's not, I don't know. Well, I think I'll go back and watch the video once again. So,
Go
okay,
back and watch it.
another question I would like to ask is, people like us that are new to product, it's sometimes like this class we just had, I may not really understand everything, but I have to go back and watch and then try to see how I can follow. What makes someone come to that place of, okay, I know product management, like I'm a product manager?
Okay, what makes you come to that place is when you come to that place. It's just when you say you're a student, right? You're going to school for the first time. You don't know anything, right? You learn.
Okay.
Learn every day. And then when you can comfortably do something, or maybe when you hear a phrase, I'm trying to be as simple as I can. When you hear a phrase, maybe somebody said user story, you don't have to
Okay.
think so much to be able to understand what a user story is. Or maybe somebody calls you, oh, I have this job for product management. I don't know how to go about it. Are you able to break down the steps that the person is supposed to take before actually starting, building a product? Then you're on your way to becoming a product manager. And also when you can comfortably use product management tools. We are not there yet, right? In this course, but we'll get there. When you can comfortably use tools to make your job easy and make other people's job easy, then you're also on your way to becoming a good product manager. But like I said, everything is you never stop learning. Every day you get to learn one thing. Maybe today you're learning about backlog, tomorrow you're learning about something else. You just keep updating keep updating yourself basically, and you
All
get
right.
there.
All right. We'll get there. Thank you.
All right. Any other question? Do we have any other question, any other concern? For those of us that, okay, let me stop the recording now. Let me stop for